Okay, so we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to day two of TestMu Conference 2024. I am Sudhir, your host and moderator for this panel. We're all set to dive into a topic that's both crucial and timely: steering AI, the critical role of quality engineering. As AI continues to transform industries, ensuring the quality and safety of the system is more important than ever. We'll be exploring how quality engineering helps in building reliable and trustworthy AI from development to deployment and beyond. We got a fantastic panel lined up today, featuring some of the biggest, brightest minds in the industry. They'll be sharing their insights on the challenges, best practices, and innovation in quality engineering to enhance AI reliability. Let's start by welcoming our panel in the alphabetical order. Chris, Senior Vice President and Global Head of Quality Engineering at Coforge. Chris has nearly 2 decades of experience and is a true advocate for quality engineering. Next, we have Kiran, who's Vice President of Engineering at Publicis Sapient. Kiran is a hands-on leader with around 20 years of experience in engineering and has been at the forefront of integrating Gen AI into quality engineering. Join us in welcoming Manish, Head of Strategy at LTIMindtree. With over 24 years of experience in IT strategy, Manish has been instrumental in driving quality transformation for some of the world leading companies. We're also thrilled to have our Richa, Quality Assurance Head of for APAC at GlobalLogic. Richa brings over 2 decades of IT experience and a passion for promoting women influence in QA. Great one, Richa. Also, we have Subha Ramaswamy, Managing Director at Accenture. Subha leads Accenture quality engineering practice in North America, focusing on AI-powered models and diversity initiatives. And finally, the man, Vikul Gupta, CTO at Qualitest. Vikul has over 2 decades of experience leading quality engineering transformation and creating innovative solutions. Now that we have met our panelists, let's jump straight into the discussion. So I'll just throw my first question for Chris here. How do traditional engineering practices adapt to the unique challenges presented by AI systems?
Thanks, Sudhir, and thanks to Lambda for having me here. Pleasure to be amongst this prestigious group. I can say that I may be the biggest mind, but not the smartest mind here. So good that you're starting with me first. Um, so so yeah, this is a great question. We could probably do the whole session on it, right? And I think it goes, I think it goes beyond adapting, right? I think when I think of the current state of quality engineering, it in itself is still in an adaptation phase from what we consider traditional testing, right? So I think it's a bit of an evolution and it's a bit of a revolution that's going to be happening because of those unique challenges from AI. And I think it's underpinned not just by innovation, but also a level of critical thinking and additional skills that maybe does not exist today, kind of in the realm of QE, right? We're going to be forced to go beyond technical challenges. And if you look at quality engineering, most of the challenges are technical process people. We now need to seriously consider factors such as statistics, right? And mathematical calculations. And guess what? Ethics, right? Not always something that we're thinking about when we're not to say we're not trying to solve for complex problems today, but when you factor in these additional attributes, right, you can see that the challenge is compounded. And I think, you think to this last point on ethics, in the service industry, when we talk about the virtues of QE, we typically use descriptors like speed and reliability and efficiency and effectiveness. Well, guess what? We now need to consider fairness, right? We need that needs to factor in to the equation. So, I think just talking about, kind of some of the fundamental attributes that need to be considered, obviously, and adapted or evolved security, right? That kind of comes to the top of my mind. Vulnerabilities in AI system, vulnerabilities in AI systems to attack are innumerable. And it goes beyond what we look at today, which are really technology-oriented attacks. Now the model can be attacked, right? Of course, you have to get through the technology, but the model can now be attacked. So it brings this whole dimension that we probably are not even factoring in today. Next, I would say, obviously, data, right? And data, there's already enough around data as far as the challenges of, just securing it, ensuring the quality. But AI systems, all that, they're so heavily relying on data. And so I think the traditional practices, need to continue to evolve. And then lastly, and there's a lot more I could talk about, but I'll pass it off, is just the complexity of these systems, right? When you look at when you look at explainability, when you look at behavioral testing, not stuff that we're factoring in today. So I'll pass off with that, but obviously there's a lot of meat on the bone to this question and a lot to think about, and a good one to start with.
Super. Manish, Vikul, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. When
Yes.
I look at AI,
Go ahead, Vikul. Go ahead. Too
when I look
enthusiastic,
at
both of
AI,
us. So go ahead.
when I look at AI, I see two intersection points. One is QA for AI. How do you test AI infused applications? And second is AI for QA. How do you do testing differently? Now let's address the first one, QA for AI, right? Like how a lot of customers struggle with what is the difference? The main difference I try to kind of explain is traditional systems without AI, let's say insurance or a retail, you put in 7, you get 17. No matter how many times you put 7, you'll always get 17. Deterministic output. Think of Amazon shopping cart. You go in the morning, it has a different recommendation. Go in the evening, it has a different recommendation. Non-deterministic output. How do you test that? Think about the testers. They're so used to rules-based testing. Their world is totally different now. When I think about QA for AI, I think like of a pyramid, right? It has 3 levels. One is, do we have the right building blocks for AI? Data assurance plays a major part in that. Then you go a level up. Did we build the AI right? This is where you talk about model bias, model throughput, model efficiencies, hallucinations, if you're thinking about Gen AI and things like those. And the last part is, did we build the right AI? Do we have the right building blocks? Did we build the AI right? Did we build the right AI? Is it even delivering what the business wanted? This is where end-to-end testing of that application happens. Now, if I switch, so this is one bucket. The second bucket is, how do you use AI to do testing better? Right? The internet is full of new ideas, new use cases, test prioritization, test consolidation, test creation. Like the world has moved on with the advent of Gen AI. You're given a user story, it automatically creates the scenarios, the test cases, the feature files, the scripts, and even the test data for it. What the developers used to enjoy, I think QA people can say, we can enjoy the same benefits. We can build, we can smartly do testing. The playing field has been leveled with Gen AI coming to our rescue. I'll pass on to Manish to add on to this.
Oh, very well put forth, Vikul and Chris. Maybe I'll take this subject to our traditional way of responding to any question paper, right? If you've been asked to give a comparison between A and B, you've got A and B, and just a straight comparison, right? So let me attempt in that fashion. Maybe some aspects that Vikul, Chris, you brought in as well we may repeat a bit. And again, the point that you mentioned, Vikul, about testing for AI and AI for testing, I'll probably park the second subject on a later discussion. Let's talk about testing of AI models, and let's take various dimensions and try to see in that dimensions if it was a traditional or a commercial application which we all have been used to testing, versus if it is now an AI model model to test how is it changing. And these are some of the set of dimensions that we can talk through, right? So one of the dimensions Vikul mentioned about was the data. And in fact, Chris, you did allude to that as well, right? In traditional strategy for testing, test data was a very important element for us. And what we looked at was the focus for us was to look at correctness of data, completeness of data, a full end-to-end life cycle a data can represent. And then you feed that for a deterministic output as you mentioned, Vikul, as well. If I compare it back against to models which are powering some of the business process in the background, what now changes is this data is not a very stereotype, standardized, correct, and meaningful data. It is a set of variation data, right? And this is a range on which a model has to respond back for, again, a range of output. That consideration in strategy is one fundamental difference I see when it comes to data as an event. Now, let me take the second element. What we tested in past is the business process, which was delivered over a set of applications, and those were interconnected applications, and they deliver certain output for an input which is given. And we had rules, functionalities which we tested. Whether it is automated fashion or manual fashion, doesn't matter. End of the day, account opening is an account opening, payment transaction is a payment transaction, and you tested those for an input and output. However, when it comes to validating business processes and applications which are powered through an AI model in the background, the process changes. The validation is not just the functionality, which is in and out, which also is about the range, the fairness, the accuracy, the hallucination, which the range output will have into. That is another strategy which is changing. Maybe I'll probably take another 30-40 seconds to just take one or two more dimensions, right? Let's talk about non-functional aspects. Now, we tested functionality for user experience, load test, number of users, concurrent users. That has been our story of so far testing non-functional aspect, especially in the performance focused. When it is models for performance, right, it is about the responsiveness of model themselves. Models are very resource-intensive models, right? And it is supported by ever-scaling infrastructure in the back. So how models are responding to a user asks with the infrastructure in the background and scaled up to the level, the resource optimized, especially from a sustainability or carbon emission standpoint, strategy changes there. And just the last bit is the regulatory dimensions, right? In past, let's say your Basel III regulation, or let's say some of the other regulations that we saw, regulations had a time period on which a functionality needs to be responded to or complied to. Now, every outcome we look at comparing against a certain regulation which models are now operated under a framework of, right? Again, a change of way in which we strategize the testing. So I suspect that traditional models of testing will have to now look at some of these dimensions to variate in their strategies. Maybe that would be one of the pointers to potentially.
Super. I think it feels like the question itself can become a one session. But
Absolutely.
in interest of time, I will do Subha and then also request Richa to join her. Is in answering this question is what role does transparency play in the quality assurance processes for AI, and how it can be effectively implemented?
Super. And when I was thinking about the question around transparency, I was actually going back to an anecdote back in, I believe, 2017 or 16, when responsible AI wasn't a cool term yet, Sudhir, right? It's now very cool to talk about responsible AI. Back then, everybody was speaking about AI, but not responsible part of AI. And as part of one of our leadership projects that we get together to do, one of my peer teams actually worked on a simplistic view of, it was just an Excel workbook to talk about, okay, we are all talking about AI systems, but how do we assess if they are truly responsible, right? So it started with back then looking at, even before we jump into whether an AI system is good, how do we start looking at if it is responsible, it's doing what it's supposed to do, it's got the fairness elements, and even thinking about the 4 pillars of responsible AI. And I still look back at it like, oh, wow, we were pioneers at that time, which we didn't think about it. But now 7 years later, we are talking about responsible AI and we're able to focus on transparency. And I know my good friends here, Manish, Vikul, and Chris talked about AI and testing AI and what are the nuances of deterministic versus non-deterministic systems. The key differences right now, when you think about transparency, how are we going to infuse that in testing? I look at, just in addition to what they already covered, is how are we going to check for auditability, right? So yes, you're checking for functionality, right? Great. You're checking for non-functionals, but how are you checking for auditability? And a good example, like right now, this year, our performance management process, I'm able to write, and a lot of you would have that in your companies too, are able to write performance evaluations where OpenAI or any other LLM is helping us write that, right? But how do we know the content that's coming in as input is good enough? Like, how do you audit trace the information? What feedback is it coming from? What completion of work it's coming from? And I'm picking this simplistic one because each one of us can relate to it, right? You've got a beautifully written paragraph for someone. Is that accurate? Is that even auditable back to where it comes from? Is one of the things we have to get used to thinking of as a parameter to think about in testing. Algorithmic transparency. We've got wonderful algorithms. In the past, we didn't care what algorithm was used in an application, right? We wanted to know, was the answer that we get, is it correct? Now there's no element of correctness because every answer can be a correct answer if you look at it when you're making recommendations, right? So it's about how are you looking at algorithmic transparency of what algorithms do these systems, do they prefer one over the other, right? And last but not least is bias and fairness, right? How are we going to report on biases and fairness aspects? And it all starts from our QA processes itself, building our test reports, which give these scores, not the traditional pass fail, but more about scores where you tweak these and take that to our reports to discuss, because it's going to be a negotiation. How far are these systems unbiased? Because you're never going to reach 100% unbiased applications. So how are you going to work through tweaking that and make that a continuum and continuous process? Richa, I'll hand this over to you to add on.
Means you have covered, Subha have covered very nicely all the things. So I will just make it slightly crisp actually what Subha have already said. So Subha mentioned that we can maintain, or transparency helps in QA, which is definitely a key for the building trust, identifying the biases, ensuring the ethical standards are met. Okay, so very important thing is that whatever the model is used is interpretability. So transparent AI allows us to understand how decisions are made, or making it easier to spot the biases or the errors. For example, if we take the example of healthcare industry, understand how the AI is diagnosing a condition can definitely help or ensures that it's not biased against certain groups. And the other thing is documenters. Means if we process documentation is there to maintain the transparency, then like clear documentation supports thorough audits and the repeatable tests, ensuring consistency. So if we take the example of the finance industry, so documenting how AI model are tested for the compliance helps meet strict regularity actually, that what are the requirements are. And third, very important thing is that stakeholder trust. So if we have a transparent processes which will build the confidence actually among the regulators and the customers, and definitely with our users. So like Tesla is one of the very good example I would like to talk about, where they are maintaining very transparent see and testing as well as reporting that how their autonomous driving AI helps actually. So this is basically building a public trust in the technology. Now, means I would like to highlight that how we can implement this transparency when we are doing these all things. So definitely, Subha already covered that we should have the adoptable, explainable AI. So what exactly that means? Means we should use the tools that make AI decision more interpretable. So like Lime is there, Shap is there. There are some model predictions are there which we can use it and adopt it. Similarly, for doing that audits, enhancing the documentation, we can support like detail the records. And regular audits need to be reviews like GDPR compliance for the data privacy ISC system and all those things we should implement actually to have that transparency in place. And definitely promote the openness. I feel that is the only thing to build a thing, like encourage a culture where we say that where is the AI behavior and what are the challenges, and openly discuss it. So in summary, I feel that transparency in AI QA is essential for managing the risk, ensuring the compliances, and building the reliability and trustworthy AI system. So that is all actually I feel that it's about the transparency. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Subha and Richa. I feel like I could not have found a better title than this. It's actually the critical role of quality engineering, right? Who would steer the whole AI ecosystem. Otherwise, we will have results what we have seen in past. Subha, you clearly called out, a responsible AI, right? Who actually uh, kind of ring fence it in a way where it can say, oh, this is compliant and this is not, right? So great inputs. uh, Kiran, sorry to keep you waiting, but then an important question for you is, how can organization integrate continuous quality improvement into their AI development lifecycle?
Sure. Thanks, Sudhir. And first of all, hi everyone. Good morning, maybe good afternoon, and good evening as well across the globe. So whoever joined from their different locations. And thanks for the Lambda test for having me here. So I'll straight dive into the topic. See, one of the interesting things happening, right, is, this transformation is happening across the SDLC, right? Not just only for the testing as a domain, right? So over a period, actually, if you see, right, little bit, maybe if I give some 30, 40 seconds of brief history of testing. So testers has been called as a tester, maybe 20 years back. The title used to be a tester. Then it transformed to test analyst, right? After test analyst, it got actually transformed to SDET, right? Which is a very common word, misused word as well. Sorry for calling it out, but it's the most misused word is the SDET, right? Still, it is a test, right? I think maybe my perspective, right here, it's just my perspective. First time a tester is getting an opportunity to be a test developer. You can proudly call this era as a test developers, right? The reason being the AI, right, development, whatever the teams are doing, even in our organization, we are doing at large scale, all this AI development, right? So whatever the developer or the dev teams are using now, right? Let's say be it a Copilot, be it OpenAI, right? In their SDLC, in the development cycle. Now the test engineer or the test developer has to think in complementing the development, right? There is no way that tester can think in isolation now, right? That is the era now actually we are going into, right? That means if, let's say, if there is a Copilot is being used in the development, I cannot actually have some other LLM, right? And I cannot actually work on some other LLM in isolation, because the outputs will be different, because then nobody understands the logic, right? So for the same prompt, if you give twice, the outcome is different, right? So in this case, there is no way that you can actually move away or shy away from development. So you have to be partner with development, and you have to be along with their solutions. You are just complementing on what, right, the development is being done, right? So that I would treat that as a fantastic opportunity for this generation and for the people living, right, in this particular AI era. And earlier, right, if you, again, maybe another practical use case take, right? Uh, like for example, any development is happening, right, for any project, the standard testing solution is Selenium Java, right? So even 60-70% of the industry does it. I am building a Node.js React based application. My solution is Selenium Java. I'm actually taking an off-the-shelf product, maybe something like Salesforce, something like, let's say, SAP, right? Or something like any other product, right? Maybe. Then my solution is still Selenium Java, right? So it used to be always one size fits all, right, in testing. That how it has been for the past decade, right? Because people are more comfortable, right? Because, okay, because I know the reusable methods in Java, which I can get easily for Selenium, or I know Cypress, right? There are used to be only comfort zone, right? Most of the people are in their comfort zone, and you do whatever development you want to do, but I still want to do my comfort zone test automation or testing, right? That used to be the thought process, right? And I'm not saying that is wrong as well. So whatever has been done in a, has been done, right? So with the teams, but now I think it's a completely shift in terms of how you're complementing. Now you cannot think that, oh, I always use only Selenium, whatever you use, right? So that doesn't work out, right? So that is where I would say it is more of a learning opportunity for the teams. And also, I think recently I did one post as well on it. It's more about unlearning and relearning, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'll put it that way. I think for this domain, more unlearning is required even than learning. That is the biggest shift, right? Has to come for this domain. In terms of the other things, right, tools and all, probably we can go on talking about it, right? But at least I want to keep my response crisp and want to give time to others as well. So that's what my 2 cents, right, on the AI in a development and how we can complement.
Super. Kiran, love the term unlearn and learn, right? And unlearn is has more weightage here. Manish, love to hear your thoughts on this as well, especially when you've been managing a lot of these digital transformations.
Fantastic. I think thanks, Kiran, for putting that analogy, right? Not analogy, but I would say the evolution of testing. I think this is a fantastic way to analyze the way role has changed and brought the integration opportunities and improvement opportunities. So maybe I would want to take that thought process forward. I don't want to change that tone that you have set in. Now, if I look at a particular AI model development, Sudhir and pretty much all my friends here, you can actually try logically splitting into 3 or 4 phases of a life cycle. It could be a crude way of defining a life cycle. There can be, probably much more matured way of writing the phases. But if I take a very crude 4-stage way of developing models, number 1 could be some sort of data ingestion, right? So you've got all the data coming in together, some model of data ingestion. Then you have got some definition of features that you want to build over a model, right? So defining those features, getting some of the features in place. Then actual model training and development. So you've got the data in place, you've got the features coming in, being sorted through, for which the model to be developed and to be continuously tested. And once this whole package is ready, you try to integrate in some of the business process, which will consume either as form of, let's say, an engine of a process, or it could be independent bots, or it could be, knowledge miners, anything that you consider as a use case there becomes your model. If I take these stages of development phases, and if I compare our SDLC of design, develop, test, and release and implement, fairly it can stand a logical bridges between the life cycle. Right now, the story that you kind of laid down, Kiran, the life cycle has evolved for testing. We were doing testing, we were started doing engineering, in testing. Now we've also started building intelligence and trying to make decisions better and faster. With AI coming in, which was the earlier bit that Vikul and Chris mentioned about AI for testing, we started to predict some of the facets of testing as well. Right? That's a life cycle we're adopting to. When a continuous quality to be integrated in that crude model of AI development, I suspect these life cycle stages continue to stay as is and critical for even in model development as well. Whether the amount of data being used or generated across the life cycle, especially models will have a lot more data volume, right? The amount of data generated using the subsequent phases of data generated and feeding back into the upstream for definition of or redefinition of life cycle, that is the place you see an integration opportunity and as well as the improvement opportunity. Continuous monitoring for the performance in production, both for the NFRs that I mentioned about, not just the response time or performance of model, but also scalability, also the aspects like fairness, accuracy, and hallucination, and so on and so forth. The continuous monitoring of that back into the tuning phase is an area where you can have a continuous quality dimensions brought in as well, right? Same way which I was talking about the regulatory aspect, continuous monitoring of regulatory compliance for every output that's coming in, any deviation, any abnormality caught at right stage, brought back into the model retraining and pushed back into the productionized models as well. Again, that's a place where continuous quality life cycle can be brought in. So there are many such facets. I would probably say we can look at embedding a continuous flavor of quality throughout the life cycle.
Great. So, Chris, over to you. The next question is, what are those most significant risks associated with AI? And we heard from Subha responsible AI, but probably good to know in detail. And how can quality engineering help mitigate these risks?
Yeah, thanks, Sudhir. First of all, I want to start. I think that this recording should be mandated for everyone in the IT world outside of quality engineering and testing, because the intellectual depth, that I think is lost on a lot of people with it's not just testing, and forget we're now factoring in AI. It just shows the kind of the progression and complexity of the world that we all live in day to day, and I think is commonly disregarded. So, but I'll jump off my soapbox and get to the question. Listen, I think the range of risks with AI systems, it's interesting to me because it's like, it's everything we have to consider today in non-AI systems, if those exist today, because everyone seems to claim that AI is in every system. If you think of performance and accessibility and security, but now we have these other considerations, and Siba did a great job of articulating. We talked about bias, we talked about ethics, right? It's like, oh my gosh, now we have to factor for all these other areas of risk. So it's the risks we have today when we think of data privacy and security, right? That's just been amplified. When we think about, and from a quality engineering perspective, right, employing strong data encryption, privacy preserving techniques, things that maybe certainly are taken seriously, but from a quality engineering perspective, maybe there's a consideration, that's handled by a different group, that now will need to be factored into quality engineering. And then just kind of the robustness of security testing, right? And when you look at testing for vulnerabilities, it just brings another dimension to kind of data privacy and security. Manish talked about, reliability, scalability, right? And so, we need to look at, from a quality engineering, you look at robustness, evaluating models performance. Not just, you've got adversarial examples, and then you've got a plethora of edge cases, right? And how all that is going to be factored in. I think a lot of this is unknown, right? And so quality engineering, I think, getting back to the first question, is going to need to continue able to not just adapt but evolve. You look at scalability and integration, right? And Mish talked about the stress testing, right? What about integration testing, right? And just ensuring thorough testing of these systems in their target environments to identify integration issues brings a whole another dimension. The last thing, and then I'll pass it off, is, I find this really fascinating. The software aspects that now need to be incorporated into QE. And Suba, you did a fantastic job of articulating that, and Richard, you talked about it as well. The ethical and social implications. So we hear a lot about it, but where does the rubber hit the road on that from a testing perspective, right? From a quality engineering perspective, and now the SStat, as Kieran rightly called out and defined. Now they're going to need to factor in, what about ethical reviews? What about, the regulatory compliance that Manish talked about, right? Ensuring that these systems adhere to relevant laws and ethical guidelines. And then the bias and fairness. And Subo, I'm stealing your words here, but that's the biggest piece for me, right? When I think about how is quality engineering going to need to do that evolution, you think of the data sets, right? And the data sets today are fairly empirical. But the training data is going to need to be representative of demographic groups, right? Typically, we're dealing with, technical attributes that align to kind of business functionality. Now we have to now we have to factor in kind of the relevance of these demographic groups, the fairness metrics, right? How do you evaluate fairness? How do you ensure demographic parity? How do you ensure equal opportunity within, these models? And so it's just kind of, my head is almost exploding as we think about this, but all this needs to be factored in. I think we talk about it, you hear about it, but the actual impact and ramifications on the discipline of quality engineering, I think is going to be is not been fully factored or considered yet, and it's going to continue to. Kieran, there's going to be this panel in 2 years from now. What is next after the SDET, right? Because you're going to have to factor in all this stuff that we never really kind of considered before. So I will stop there and pass it off. Thanks, Sudhir.
Super. Subha, why don't you jump in? You kind of spoke about
Yeah.
a lot of these pointers.
And I have the tough job of following Chris after this, right? Like Chris, you went through a whole lot of risks that exist with AI and what we could do. And maybe in my typical fashion of stories, just this morning, and I don't know if it was planned by TechBrew. So my TechBrew newsletter is blowing up with Recall AI. I don't know how many of you read Recall AI. It's hot off the press, talking about being able to take screenshots of activity we did in the past and presenting it to us. And I was like, oh boy, why are we thinking about the ramification of privacy and security after releasing something? But that seems to be almost the trend of every AI application, right? We'll think about it, right? We'll come to it in the next version and not as a plan. And if any one of us in this, that's in this session, listening in this session was part of those, we would have asked some of those tough questions. I am confident of that. And Richa, this is a fun fact for us. Like we always grew up learning 6 to 8 hours of sleep is very important for human beings to, have a good day and grow and all that. Guess what? Just latest research says that was just based on data from men, right? Yeah. This was last month when I was reading the article. It says women need anywhere between 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Now I know why I'm groggy in the mornings, because I've been following a completely wrong research and thinking I'm getting enough sleep, something is wrong with me, right? So this is just an example of a data set that was used in research, and look at the implication that it has for everybody beyond the groggy me in the mornings, right? So the question of when we think about testing AI systems, how are we thinking about appropriate data sets? And Chris talked about demographic information. It goes beyond, right? Like we built these systems in our own soapboxes, sitting in urban cities, right? With a significantly wealthy population. That's all we know. We grew up that way. And we are thinking of building systems that are going to impact some rural cities, rural villages, right? Where people don't have access to the same things we do. So when we are thinking about testing this, it's equally important. How do we bring in those perspectives? You and I can't bring those perspectives, right? So, and there is the element of where we say the true user testing, one is the demographic data, but truly bringing in the actual users, people that this will implicate, is going to become critical, right? So it's everything from crowdsourced testing to what we need to have the actual people, not some of us that builds this and test this, who have no relationship and understanding of the implications, need to be kept in mind, right? So it can't be all 100% automation does this, right? So this is another aspect to keep in mind. And another interesting aspect, now I know we talk a lot about self-driving cars, and that's going to be the reality. I'm not even going to joke about all the self-driving taxis that were honking at each other in the middle of a night in San Francisco, which became a big butt of jokes because they were all parking and honking at each other and annoying the neighborhood. But as a simple user, for me, we get used to some of the automations like lane detection, right? So for me, I'm so used to in my car, like, remember the days when we were not given our driving licenses or dinged if we didn't look over our shoulders? We don't do that these days, right? I'm changing my lanes as long as there's no orange. More than one occasion, I've had to swerve back because it didn't show me an orange and there was a car way too close, way too fast, right? So when we are testing for these automations in AI, how are we going to actually keep in mind what becomes habitual? And I know this is happening in a lot of automations in cars, right? Where it looks at if Tesla does that job. Like if you've been distracted for long, it'll stop the self-driving ability and say, hold that steering wheel and drive, my friend, right? So it's forcing users to do that. But as testers, for all of us, how are we going to think about these use cases? And it's less of a solution, but more for all of us to ponder, thinking about not just automation and the benefits of it, but how these AI automations can create habits, and how are you going to bring that back into the whole human loop, right? So that's why testing for these AI applications will always have a human in the loop in designing them, but also testing them, but thinking through what will happen if these becomes habits, new habits, right? So I will pass on from this back to you, Sudhir.
Right. Thank you, Subha. And I think picking up the Tesla example, Richa, how do you see different industries approaching quality engineering for AI and what they can learn from each other?
Yeah, I mean, Sudhir, first I want to say I'm loving this conversation actually. I was not thought of this will be that exciting to have it and sharing stage with this all great minds. So like let's dive into how different industry approach quality engineering for AI first. And definitely then we will see that how they can understand. Definitely each industry have its own unique challenges according to you, according to me. But there are definitely valuable lessons which can be shared across the board. So let's start with the healthcare thing. Here the stakes couldn't be higher. Safety and accuracy are the paramounts, which is why we see the rigorous validation and strict regularity compliances. So for those in other sectors, the takeaway is very clear: thorough testing and the definitely adherence to the regulation means aren't just the checkbox. Actually, it's really essential for ensuring the AI system perform reliably, and especially when the lives are on the line. Now let's take the example of the finance industry. So in finance, it's all about the risk management and transparency. So the AI model undergo intense stress testing and must be interpretable, like we have already discussed. Shubha have mentioned, and we have talked about the how we can bring the transparency in QA. Meaning, what exactly that means? Meaning, every decision that AI makes need to be explainable. Okay, then this industry highlights the importance of robust risk assessment, according to me, and that ensuring that AI system can be trusted by the regulators and the customers alike. So if your AI can't explain, it cannot be trusted, according to me. Now, very important, Tesla again, actually, automotive industry. So think about the autonomous vehicles. Now, what this automotive industry places a huge emphasis on the real-time decision making and safety critical testing. So they conduct extensive simulations and the real-world tests to ensure the AI system can make split-second decision in the complex environment. And the lesson is here, like real-world testing is invaluable especially when your AI operates in the dynamic and the unpredictable conditions. Now we will go with the retail thing. Actually, the retail sector focuses on scalability, customer experience that is driven by agile and data driven AI system. So what can other industry learn from this? The importance of the agility and the continuous improvement. So retail shows that staying flexible and iterating quickly is the key to meet the customer needs in the fast-paced environment. Last not the least, the manufacturing. Here the focus is on the predictive maintenance and the operational efficiency. So AI used to predict the failures before they happen, keeping system running smoothly. And this sector teaches us the valuable predictive analytics and the reliability. So if your AI can keep a factory running without the hiccups, that's the lesson worth applying anywhere. So now, according to me, what are the key takeaways where the cross-industry learning happens? So there's a lot we can borrow from each other's, like healthcare's rigorous validation or the finance emphasis on the transparency can strengthen the AI quality engineer across the board. Collaborative standards is another example. Then innovation through the diversity. That is the most lovable thing I feel that we should do that. Finally, when we learn from the diverse approaches, we drive the innovation and enhance the reliability and of AI system across all the sectors. So whether you are in the healthcare or the finance or the automotive or the real retail or the manufacturing, there's a wealth of knowledge out there that can help you to refine your approach to AI quality engineering. So definitely, let's make that means to build a stronger and more reliable AI system for the future. We need to learn from the lessons from all the industries, and definitely we need to bring AI itself for to do the testing. Over to you, Sudhir.
Thank you, Richa. I mean, from my personal experience, I can tell you about how dynamic, and we could also touch base on that this morning, is how dynamic it is, right? With the whole personalization and the dynamism the retail sector has, especially, it is critical for that to be kind of catered into. With that, Vikul and Vikul, after that, Kiran, I would also like to hear your thoughts on how is AI complementing or enhancing your traditional test automation use cases.
So I think I'll take it in two steps, right? One, if we talk about just traditional AI, where the focus was on prediction, classification, and so on, there are many use cases which we leveraged and provided to our customers. One was where you had some 10,000 manual test cases, the ability to identify reusable components using AI. We did that for a large healthcare customer, and what that did was it made our, before we automated, it made our whole design very modular. We were able to identify what are the reusable components, identify and then optimize our automation efforts. Second was test consolidation. Before we automate, do we need to automate everything? How many of them are duplicate? How many of them are similar? Right? A traditional thing which every SI would want to do is, you have 80,000 test cases, let me come and automate everything because I get paid for automating everything. But that's not what our customers are wanting. So that's one aspect. I was looking at the chat, someone was saying, will AI change the fact that developers will take extra time and drop us the code one day before the testing is supposed to complete? So I responded to that saying, that's another area where AI can help. Trust me, guys, no matter what we say, things will happen. There will be delays. And in spite of all the delays, testing would still need to be completed on time. Otherwise, we are the roadblocks. We are slowing the release. So there, AI can come to rescue where it can help you prioritize rather than run 5,000 test cases. Can you use AI to identify which are the test cases which have the maximum defect yield? Which are the test cases which have not failed for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months? Maybe deprioritize them a little bit. Look at AI to identify what is the impact of a code change or a requirement change, and do change impact based testing. Those things were not possible before. So if we shift gears and move on to generative AI, that's where I feel the biggest impact of AI on test automation is. Right? So traditional AI reduces the test cases you have to automate. And then when you have to automate, I think now we are at a stage where me and my team and many other companies have built capabilities where you feed in a user story, it automatically creates a test scenario, automatically creates a manual test case, creates a feature file with an amazing acceptance criteria, and then can create Playwright scripts, Selenium scripts, XLQ scripts, Tricentis scripts, or any other platform scripts. And one of the common follow-up question I get when I make the statement is like, Vikul, are we going to be out of job? No, we're not. I think if you look to what Chris said, Richa said, Subha said, there is always a need for testers to be there. None of this is autonomous automation. I would want it to be. The engineer in me wants it to be that way, but it's not real. You still need the SMEs. So at every step, when user stories get converted into test scenarios, we want an SME to come in. So for us, it is not about replacement, it is about productivity gain. How can we enable the testers to do more and better? Imagine the problem of getting it only 2 days before. You still have to do it without AI, but AI can make it easier. You don't have to lose sleep over it. So that's one aspect, right? I would say. Second, I will just end my part. Copilot was invented probably in 1920s, 1924, somewhere around that. Or don't grill me on the date, but long time back. And people said we won't need pilots. We still have pilots. No one has flown in a plane without pilots. What we have to do is, as new technologies, automation came in, we started doing automation. AI came in, listen to all the speakers. AI assurance is a real thing. Transparency, reliability, explainability, those aspects will come in. So we have to look for embracing as the QA role morphs, what more can we do? Kiran, over to you.
Thanks, Vikil. I think, Vikil, you have covered most of the aspects, right? So what I could actually think of, I think you have covered most of them. I think I'll just add a little more to what you said, right? So I think you rightly said, right? See, one of the thing AI, what it is doing, right, for this domain, like for example, test case design is a table stake now. Okay, why you spend a lot of time in doing test case design? Because test case design used to be, if I remember right, I mean, pretty little back, it used to be at least 25% of the estimate that anyone can give to the customer, right? If I'm taking, let's say, 100 days, I will account at least 25 to 30 days just for my design activities. Now that will drastically come down, right? That means you are actually getting a space where somebody was saying, right, I always get the build late in the game, then how I do testing, right? So now you have more actually, right? You are equipped more now to handle those kind of situations, right? So now it is not about more about compliance. Now it is more about how I can actually take care of those things. Even some things are coming late in the game, like for example, it coming in the last minute, the technology is different, and I don't have a clue on the technology, how I can take care, right? So now you have additional weapons with you, how you can actually tackle. And I'll give a very interesting use case, right? So we have done like multiple use cases for our customers. See, one of the use case was, so there was a need. I mean, all of you, we're all in the service industry, right? So many of in this group, right? So one thing, right, what happens is whenever any new engagement, or maybe you're taking over some other engagement and starting, so there will be a ask of change of the framework or a change of existing thing, right? So any change obviously comes with a lot of effort. Then people will start thinking about, oh, I need to migrate now all your UFT scripts to Selenium, or I need to migrate from Selenium to Cypress, or I need to migrate from, let's say, Cypress to Playwright, right? So when you actually want to do this itself used to become a small project, right? If I remember, because you will have thousands, because every product or the customer side, they will have thousands of test cases, because that has been built over a period of years, right? So it's not like just they have built like last year. So if you have to migrate thousands of test cases, you have to do cleanup, you have to do again migration. Means earlier it used to be a pure development effort, right? When I say development, more in terms of the script development, right? Now that drastically goes down now, because this is one of the biggest use case the AI can be used, right? So because practically we have done this, right? So for one of the use case where we have actually migrated from Java to JavaScript, right? So and that we have done not being a Java expert on the team, right? Because generally whenever we do traditional way, how we do, right, we get one expert, right, from the practice, and we get the domain knowledge person, and we get like few testers who can do the scripting part of it, right? So then it used to become a small 6 to 8 member or 8 to 10 member team. Then that team will actually do migration, right, which will go on for like 6 months. Now everything can be done in weeks or days, right? And without being experts on the team, right? So that, I think that's one of the powerful use cases if you look at, right? So how this is transforming. And another thing, right, I would add is we talk about a lot of shift left, right? I think that is obviously a decade term now, right? We all say, oh, do shift left, right? I think now it is more to think about shift right as well, not just the shift left, right? Because now you always been right, the teams has been actually more towards shift left, because I start from the get-go of the development, right? But what about your customers? Because end of the day, QA is between both the IT and both the business, right? So I look at that way, right? So because actually we are bridging some of the concepts from IT, taking care of the IT, and also we are taking care of the customer, right? The customer feedback, user experience, right? So how the customer navigates right into the application and all, right? What is the usability, right? And this is the right place now, because you now get an opportunity to do the shift right appropriately into your SDLC, right? Because it's all only SDLC. I mean, it's all only shift left right now, right? Because now the production, take the production feedback, take the production navigation, how the customer is having, take the feedback loops from the production with the real customers, right? So that you can actually incorporate now. It's not about only technology now, right? Because AI is actually giving us thinking in terms of some of the other adjectives, right? Which other adjectives earlier, right, used to be only in our work ethics. Like we talk about ethics, we talk about fairness, we talk about all of these qualities, only the way how we work as a human beings. Now these ethics, you have to bring it to the technology as well, right? So like AI. So when you want to do that to the technology, then obviously your thinking and everything will, because now you're asking a mission to be in a mission to work in ethical manner. Earlier we used to ask human beings, right? Now you're asking a mission to be in ethical manner, mission to be not to be biased, a mission to work in a very more transparent, right, in a transparent way, right? So I'm saying all these things are changing, so our thought process also has to change a lot here, right? I mean, this is continuously evolving. This is right. It is not like I'm saying overnight anyone can get it overnight, or any teams can change overnight. It is a process that will change, but the acceleration will be very fast in this. The only thing we need to actually look at it is, earlier any trend in the industry used to take 5 to 6 years. If somebody want to UFT took 10 years, that market, right? All paid money for UFT for 10 years, right? All VB, earlier it's all VB. Next Java came into picture. Java took for another 7-8 years in the market. Now it's all Node.js, JavaScript based, like Cypress, Playwright and all, right? That is taking from the last 2-3 years, right? The trend. But the next trend all will be couple of years max, not more than that, right? Because the trend cycle is actually changing because of this acceleration, right? I think we need to adopt our mindsets as well. It's nothing is constant, right? Obviously, change is the new constant, right? That way, I think there is a lot of opportunity that is happening. I mean, already whatever Vikul talked about, Manish talked about, Subha talked about, Richa as well, right? And Chris has talked about. So, I mean, there is a holistic view of changes that are happening, right? But I think it's the time for us to embrace and obviously move on to the next challenge, right? So I will just put it that way, my thought, and over back to you, Sudhir.
It sounds like a closing note. We are right on top of the clock. I so wish is to continue this, but very important question, because a lot of people are looking up to leaders like you. All AI, and everyone talks about AI, but what these people, these practitioners can do, and especially what you're doing to develop the talent pool to meet this growing demand and kind of take care of, all the ensuring that AI is all ethical and a responsible AI. So 30 seconds, please, from each one of you in alphabetical order. Chris.
Well, first of all, Sudhir, I thank you for being able to go first. I would hate to have to follow any of my co-panelists here. 30 seconds. Listen, I think, and Kieran hit upon a point. We're really focused on continuous learning. This stuff is moving really, really fast. Right. So continuous learning in increments of weeks and months versus years is critical. What we're doing at Coforge, though, listen, we have all the standard, right? The basics of AI and ML. But we're creating certification programs around data, around AI ethics and bias, around, interesting. We're doing a lot of our campus hires now are statistics and math majors versus IT or engineering majors. So we're really looking at the core of each of the totality of our practitioner base. How do we, you could consider them all this edge training beyond the core of quality engineering. How do we augment that and then driving that across our practitioner base? It's no longer an option or a nice to have. It's imperative that you go beyond just being a good quality engineer.
Super. Kiran, 30 seconds, please.
Sure, I'll try to keep it that second. So, see, one thing, right? From an organization level, we are doing a lot of things, right? Like Chris mentioned, so we do have a lot of certification programs we came up with. We came up with a program called Prompt Engineering, right, for the testing domain, which is particularly to the testing domain, and also in the terms of vertical as well, right? Like retail will have a different kind of prompts. BFSI will have different kinds of prompts, and you have like telecom, you'll have different side. So all these things, courses and all creation will happen, right? So that is again, as a part of every organization, I'm sure will do these kind of set of things. But my actually one thing is, I'll tell two very radical things, right? I don't know if how the entire audience will take it. One is, don't hire anybody with a test in a title, even though the person is a tester, right? That will change the mindset, first of all, right? Because for me, mindset change is the biggest thing, right? So, I mean, you remove the word of test, put something else, right? So, because the person has the ability, right? Everyone has the ability, but they're confined to their rule-based testing, script-based testing, right? So that has to go away, right? So that is the one thing, right? So the profile of a tester should change, number one. That's how the organization should focus on. Number two, right? Like I said, one of my very important favorite word is unlearning, right? That is also very important. Create a courses for how to unlearn as well, not just only learning. We're always focused on learning, right? So why you should not do a traditional way of writing 25 steps in a test case, right? Don't write 25 steps in a test case. That is of no use now, right? So we are not going to keep it and consume the memory on and on, right? So I think these are the two aspects I would say. One is, make sure the profile you're hiring, right, is not just a testing profile. That's number one. Number two, make sure the person, give them and accommodate, right, some kind of room for the person to unlearn as well, not just only keep on pounding on learning, right? So I think these two will go a long way, right, in getting to the right mix.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, we'll have to move on quickly. Manish, over to you.
Yeah, probably the movement of functional to automation now to making more engineering-driven testing or a skill upliftment. I suspect we need to continue doing that and sharpen the technology edge for all associates who are going through it. And the addendum to that is the softer aspects of creativity, some level of emotional intelligence, and the interdisciplinary knowledge that Kiran, you talked about, domain contextuality. I think that strengthening that in a skill upliftment program will be very critical, Sudhir, for people to be successful in this space.
Great. Richa.
So, like, I will just slightly put it in a slightly different way. Like, if you imagine that you are a quality engineer and stepping out into a high-tech control room for an advanced AI system. Now, to operate this new machinery, you need more than just your traditional tool. So first you get trained in the basics of AI and the machine learning, then how the system engine works. You should know that. Then the next, dive into the data science. Means because the system performance depends on the quality of the data it's fed. Then you are the hand cutting edge AI testing tool. So mastering how to keep that system running smoothly. And then finally, you learn how to interpret the system in complex output. So ensuring every action is aligned with your goal, you will able to do that. And definitely continuous learning and continuously unlearning, that both we need to do it to keep yourself sharp, ready to handle whatever this advanced AI control room throws your way. That is how I can imagine.
Perfect. Subha, over to you.
Based on all the questions that I saw around, hey, what can I learn to test AI systems? Just 3 things that you can start off maybe today is focus on prompt engineering, pick up courses on AI, ML, and data. This is going to become key for you across all tests that you're going to do. And maybe last point, until like we talk about, we don't want to segment leaders as Black leaders, African-American leaders, and women leaders. Someday we'll only call leaders as leaders. The same for AI. Until we reach every AI being responsible AI, keep making your AI systems responsible AI systems.
Super. Thank you, Subha. Vikul.
So for me, if you listen to Richa, AI is everywhere. You can't find an industry where there is no AI, period, right? Even when you go meet your doctor, there is AI there. So for me, the way we have communicated to our testers is AI is the new Java, AI is the new Lightning, which powers everything. So whether you are performance, whether you are accessibility, whether you are automation, whether you are security, doesn't matter. You need to know AI. So AI is core, like Java. Everyone has to learn. So we have internal QT Academy where we have made Udemy courses and other courses. We've created curriculums for AI. Second is we've created a career path. So you have QA, then QE, then SDETs. Now we have DSITs, which is data science engineering test. So we have that. So this is about educating. But then education only takes you through theory. So what we've done is we've created Docker containers of local LLMs and made them available so that they can install it on their laptops and try out. What you can try and learn is much more than just reading about it. So I think those are a few of the things I would say learn. And it's not just an engineer's job. As leaders, as MDs, as CEOs of the companies, we all are learning AI at the same time. So we are leading by examples. So that's it.
Super. Yeah, thank you so much. I so wanted it to continue, but I would genuinely want to give you a big thank you for to our esteemed panel. We'll be hosting all our recorded session on YouTube, so you can go back and listen to them again, and do share them with your team members. With that, happy testing and have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.